Hello, everyone. We're live once again with the cricket legend David Gower, former captain of England and Playwright Foundation. Is very, very delighted to welcome you back, David. How have you been and how's it going?
Well, I'm okay, thank you. A little bit shocked by events at the start of the week at a place called Lords, which, let's face it, actually, at the end of it all, I mean, the first thing to say, obviously, is congratulations to India for pulling off a very, very impressive win. Secondly, you can say that if you have a test match like that, and even the first one, that sadly, of course, rained upon on the final day, even the first one, who knows how that might have turned out, although I have to say India had the best of that one as well. But look at the way these first two tests have gone. In some ways, you can say it's a pretty close contest. In others, you can say, well, India had the best of the first test match, won by 150 runs in the second, and that's not close. But one thing you can say for sure is that we've seen some fabulous, gripping, high-class test match cricket. And in this era where people like me, people like us are interested and at times very concerned about Test cricket, when you have adverts like that for it, of course, it's brilliant. And I think if you've got two sides like this, England and India playing out games like that, then I think it's very, very good indeed for the health of Test cricket. At the same time, we had a game in the Caribbean won by 1 wicket by West Indies against Pakistan. Again, gripping finishes. It's been a funny month. I mean, this sounds like a very long answer to a very simple question. How am I? But you look at the current stage as well of this thing called the 100 we have in the UK, which is nearing its own climax after a month or so. It's been very colourful. It's been very entertaining. People seem to have liked it, which is good. Lots of people seem to have gone to it. But at the same time, you have this complete clash between that and Test match cricket. And because of the attention given to the new product, there's been this feeling that even in England, where we are able still to put people into a ground to watch Test matches for 5 days, that there is this sense of competition. And if we don't look after Test cricket, then maybe in 10 years' time, even in England, for instance, it'll be something where we're struggling to get people to come and watch it. So I think we've got to be very careful to say what a great game it is, very careful to promote games like the ones we've had. And we'll look forward, of course, to 3 more gripping contests for the rest of this series.
Absolutely, David. You summed it up so well. It's an answer which has a lot of questions arising from it. And let's start with the bigger picture. So, Test cricket versus T20 at the same time. I mean, perhaps I know it's England's domestic competition in a way, but you have many professionals playing. It's a very colourful tournament, the 100, and it's very innovative, very exciting. Luckily, as you rightly said, we had crowds for the Test match as well. And the Test match actually overdid the hype and the excitement. I mean, overlived it and was fantastically well contested. I think the drama of Test cricket was never seen and felt as much as, I mean, rarely felt as much as this Test match. And the first one at Trent Bridge, as you rightly said, wasn't too bad either. The last day could have gone either way. I mean, 150 runs to go. India were 1 wicket down. But as we saw in Lords, the England was all out for 120. But my question to you, and this is the main thing that I want to ask you actually, is there something a little wrong with the English Test team at the moment? I mean, chopping and changing took place because of the rotation policy when they were playing in India. I remember Moeen Ali did pretty well in the win, and then he went back home. And then now I think they have quite a few players who are injured, but there's nobody laying back, I mean, resting because of the rotation policy at least. But the team doesn't quite look right at the moment. What can be done and what is wrong?
Well, how long have you got? I mean, that's one of the perennial problems that any country, any team can have. I mean, the biggest problem I think is at the moment, because if you just actually rewind a moment to talk about rotation in the winter, rotation was part of the story, and you've got to understand. I mean, I've done a tiny bit of a bubble in Abu Dhabi with PSL, 3 or 4 weeks max, with a bit of quarantine thrown in. That's a tiny bubble, which if you do it once in a blue moon, you can do that. For players nowadays, and for England over the last 18 months, it's been a very stressful time for them. So I've got to understand that. We've got to understand that. mean, I think I've talked before in various places about some of the problems they had with their decision making during the winter with this rotation. And you mentioned Moeen Ali, Johnny Bairstow, who now actually looks as though he's in good form in Test matches. He got runs in Sri Lanka, was sent home, came back to India out of form, and played in those Test matches where even people in form struggled. So there are things like that which you can question quite vividly. But at the moment, right, forget all that. We've done India, we've done New Zealand, and we had a sub-strength side against New Zealand. New Zealand duly beat us, and of course that was used as a springboard for them to win the World Test Championship final. And they are a very good team. But we've shot ourselves in the foot here and there. And at the moment, of course, the biggest problem of all, apart from the odd injury, is the fact that you average about 2 from the top 3. I mean, that's a horrible exaggeration, I know. But you look at the opening partnership with very little confidence. Whatever their abilities and their characters, we get a lot of ducks up there. I mean, Burns, for instance, I think, when he gets runs, he somehow makes the most of what is an unorthodox set of movements as a batsman, especially at the top of the order. Sibley has run out of shots, has run out of runs, and has now run out of his place. One they dropped as well, Crawley, is the one who looks as though he could actually play. I like his style, I like his attitude, but again, for the last year or so, since his 267, I think it was, against Pakistan, he's struggled to make 10. So you cannot sustain a Test career doing that. And Hasib Hamid, who, it's an extraordinary story, his comeback into Test matches. I felt so sorry for him in the first ball duck at Lord's, but I wasn't that much more reassured with the second innings. It's a tough job up there. We know it's a tough job in the top 3, but then you look at Rohit and Rahul, and you see how they've played it. And it's chalk and cheese. I mean, it's not. It is embarrassing. It is embarrassing if you're an English cricket fan to watch a Test match at Lord's where Indian openers come and show us how it's done. They leave the ball, they play the right shots, they defend, they attack, they have style, they look orthodox, they pick the bat up the right way, they bring the bat down the right way, and they just look the part. Whereas you look at sort of Burns and Sibley, and bats are waving everywhere, and heads are falling over, and stupid. It just doesn't look right. Now, I know, okay, right. People will tell me that the answer is actually in productivity. Well, it doesn't look right, and they're not getting runs. So that's that. And so that's a huge problem. And they've obviously, but as we speak, England have made changes, bringing in Milan for one. So it looks like Hasib will open, Milan will probably go 3. It's not wholesale changes. It's tinkering. And although I think Milan is a decent player, he only averages 20 or 27, 28 in Test matches. And that's with 140 in Perth. And people say to me that they think he's probably a better player overseas on different pitches. So, I'm not expecting... again, you wish them well, because for the sake of the series and the sake of the England team, you want someone somewhere up there to succeed and give Joe Root more than 10 minutes off the field before he has to walk out and save the side again. So these are the problems. Runs and wickets, well, you need both. People always say you need 20 wickets to win a game. Well, you need enough runs to play with in the first place. So whichever side you're on, the runs or the wickets equation, a bit of both always go down well. And there are some quite big problems there.
Absolutely. And, I'm going to ask you about that one more time about England, because Sunny G, as you know, your surname starts with G, and Gavaskar also starts with G, right? So in India, we with respect, we call people G anyway. You may have heard that, right? So they'll say,
have indeed, yes.
David G, but they'll also say Vivek G to me, right? So G is basically J-I, which means respect. But your surname is David G and Sunny G. So Sunny G said on air, and by the way, he was complimenting your cover drive when there was a competition of cover drives. I think they showed Kohli and Babar Azam and Joe Root, not Joe Root, I think they showed Williamson. Did you see that?
Okay, I wasn't. No, I was probably at the ground, not watching on the screen at the time. Yeah.
We saw you on screen, and about that time he was saying that David Gower and Saurav Ganguly, among the left-handers, had great cover drives. So that's a compliment for you. If you'd like to respond, you can tell me what you think of Gavaskar's cover drive.
Well, Sunny was a brilliant player. Not just the cover drive, but straight driving, cutting, very strong. As men who, as the shorter men can be, very strong with the cut shot. I mean, I've seen Sonny make a whole stack of runs. I remember the double hundred, for instance, at the Oval, where chasing over 400, he nearly took India to victory at the Oval all those years ago, which would have been a stunning victory in every sense. Stunning for us in the wrong sense, stunning for them in the right sense. So I've seen Sonny make a lot of runs. He was, I mean, yeah, he was a brilliant player. And it wasn't just a cover drive, as I say, other shots as well. He tucked it off his legs. He drove it straight. Yeah, and one of the great things about Sonny, actually, of course, is in an era where, for instance, the West Indies, when Sonny was at his peak, West Indies were just starting to be that powerful, fast bowling side. But he took runs off them in the Caribbean, and that at the time was seen as something equally extraordinary. So I mean, I know if I was wearing a hat right now, I'd take it off to Sonny G, or if you want to put it another way, with even more respect, Sonny GG.
Lovely, David, and he would have said the same about your batting. I'm quite sure. Not only the cover drive, but coming to the point here, he said England looks a 2.5% team at the moment, with Joe Root and Jimmy Anderson being the two. And he said Robinson did pretty well, so he liked his bowling, Pfeiffer in the first test. So he said they look like 2.5 at the moment. Now, I know that Archer is injured and Stokes is mentally, he's relaxing his mind. So there are other issues involved. But then how can England perform and compete with India, which looks dominant after the Lords? I mean, not really in the test match, but going forward, they might become.
Well, I suppose the trick always, if you are Joe Root as captain, if you're Chris Silverwood as the coach, and you're preparing your speeches for the build-up to the next test match in Leeds, firstly, you will say, you won't harp on what's missing in that sense. You cannot do anything about people who are not available for selection. And you always have to try and build up the people who are going to be there. So every team talk I've ever listened to, is focused on the strengths of the team that is there. And yes, of course, it is a shame that you're missing, potentially very important people. So, Ben Stokes in any England side has always been a pivotal figure because he is the sort of character that lifts the room just by being there in the first place. So you've got to miss him. You can't help it. You've got to move on. But the first thing you will say also, apart from praising every one of your team and trying to build them up to feel special and be special, is that, again, going back to Lords, when Rishabh Pant was dismissed on the fifth day early on, everyone at Lords, me on the television, everyone watching that England team, wherever they were, thought, yes, that's what we needed. We can now bowl India out for, less than, or have the lead at under 200, chase 180, 200, that'll be fine. And we can win this game. And of course, it was the next hour or so that turned the game around, shall we say, unexpectedly. And let's face it, even in India, I suspect there was a little bit of surprise, admiration,
Absolutely.
no doubt. That Shami and Bumrah appeared to be loving every moment of it and smacking it all around the park. I mean, Joe Root admitted the tactics were wrong, and I would have to agree with him. But yeah, that's where the game changed. So at the start of day 5, England were favourites. 20 minutes into day 5, England were even stronger favourites. So if, as happens so often, they can tell themselves, look, we can change this round with a bit of thought, bit of application, more hard work, of course. It's always hard work. Yeah, but if they get in that situation again and they're in with a shout of winning the game, then this next time they have to close it down. Because, of course, if they can close the next one down and make it 1-1, that keeps the series very much alive, makes it fascinating. If they end up getting it wrong again and it's 2-0 with 2 to play, well, then you fear that the momentum would carry India through. So, I mean, that's how those team talks will go. That's how the preparation will go when they get to Leeds next week. And they will, they'll be up for it. I mean, I know, for instance, that when you've got, I've always said to people that if you have a test side with, say, even 6 or 7 out of 11 playing well, then you're okay. Because you'll always have, every game you'll have 3 or 4 having an off day or a bad game, whatever it might be. So, I mean, there'll always be a weak link somewhere, not because they're bad players, not necessarily because they're out of form, but that's just the way this wonderful game of cricket works. So if you get, as I say, 6 or 7 people performing and contributing to a game, then you'll be in a good position. A lot of responsibility, of course, falls on Joe Root's shoulders, both as captain, now to turn this round, but especially as batsmen. I mean, we saw what happened in India, and we've seen it so far in the series here in England, that if he gets runs, he keeps them in the game. And he played, and I have to say, I watched that innings at Lord's, the first innings, and he just played, sublime cricket, absolutely sublime cricket. So, let's hope he carries on doing that. But of course, it's a human game. Every now and again, someone comes up against even a Joe Root, even the best in the world get good deliveries bowled at them. And if someone nips him out for single figures next game up in Leeds, you can imagine the effect that would have psychologically on an England team, in which case someone else has to fill that gap. Someone else has to get a big 100. And so far, we haven't really seen signs that there's someone else going to do that.
That's right, David. And, this fifth day at Lord's, I mean, a packed Lord's, England had, 270 to chase, which was not likely. But 120 all out. I mean, India was bowling well. It wasn't a bad pitch at all. It was playing pretty well. And Joe Root was looking pretty good at 32 or something. Mm-hmm. But the pressure. And then there was intense bowling from all four pacers. I don't think Jadeja had... I think Jadeja needs Ashwin at the other end, but we'll come to that later. But these four bowlers against England's batting, what exactly happened? Did they need to, were they panicking? Did they play too defensively? What went wrong there at 120 all out?
Well, again, going back to Joe Root, Joe said that he was disappointed that they couldn't defend for 60 overs, whatever it was, give or take 60 overs. And I would agree. At that level of the game, you should be able somehow. But to be fair, I've been in teams where I can use an example. 1989 at Headingley against Australia, we should have survived the final day. We didn't, because you find that pressure builds. And I was asked a very good question at a dinner on Monday night. Why is it that batting collapses happen? What is it? What's the psychology that, for instance, one or two get out quickly and then everyone gets out quickly? Well, again, the same thing I was talking about just now. Sometimes you find that a couple get set, a partnership develops, and the rot is stopped. Sometimes not. And although there was a bit of resistance down the order as the ball got a bit older, again, you give full credit to India and those pacemen for the way they kept going. Found deliveries. For instance, the Bumrah delivery to get rid of Robinson was very clever.
I was going to ask you that. Please okay. Go run us
ask
through
me again. That. Okay, just at that stage where they hadn't taken a wicket for a while, and the ball had got a bit older, and the movement had diminished. So this is one of the skills, this slower ball, which and to get that delivery to pitch on and in effect turn, so straightening from around the wicket, but to pitch on straight and hit the wickets, beat the shot, and would have been hitting the wickets but for the pad. It's a very clever piece of bowling. And these are skills. This is where there is this overlap between the one-day game, the shorter game, and Test match, because you get skills like that, which are developed primarily in one-day cricket. And it just proves how these skills are transferable. So you can use exactly that in the context of a Test match, get a key wicket, go on and win a game. But I think, obviously the damage was done right at the top. And with those new balls, those new Duke's balls, it was a bit overcast that day. So conditions were pretty right for bowling. It wasn't a demon of a pitch by any stretch of the imagination. But we've always said, we batsmen, we who have got out to people for nothing over the years and made runs as well. We've always said, if you get a good ball, you get a good ball. And there's some very good balls being bowled when the ball was brand new. There is movement there, but there is skill there. And I think it's widely acknowledged, and I'm happy to say exactly the same thing. It's widely acknowledged this is the best ever India pace attack. With the depth, having four like that. You can argue the Ashwin thing. You talk about that in a moment, but having three and or four all contributing, because again, going back to my thing about 6 or 7 out of 11, and you have a good team. You got a team that's going to do well. Well, if you have a bowling attack where everyone's chipping in, everyone's contributing. Again, I can give you an example of England against Australia, 2005, the most recent time probably, where even a 4-man attack with 3 pacemen and a spinner, everyone just dovetailed in, and that gives you results. So here you've got an Indian attack where if one comes off, someone comes on, they're still keeping the pressure on by and large. And that pressure will tell. So you've got 4 top-class bowlers. I think it's this whole thing leaving Ashwin out. Of course, it's a very powerful side that can leave an Ashwin
That's
out of
right.
a Test team. It's a very powerful side. But conditions, to be fair, at Lords, when the ball was old and the sun was out, it looked pretty flat. When the clouds were there and the ball was new, it looked like seamers had something to work with. The pacemen had something to work with. And certainly at Trent Bridge, throughout that Test match, it was going to be very much a paceman's game. So, I think, depending what they get up at Leeds next week, that's always been a ground where seamers have done well when it's overcast. It's not normally been a ground where it's there for the absolute paceman. It doesn't go, they're normally, the cliche at Leeds is a pitch where if the sun comes out, it's just flat, no real pace, just easy paced. If the clouds are there, it tends to seam. I mean, there must be some sort of special ingredient in the grass they've got up there that makes it sort of move around when the clouds are out. But as I say, it's a bit of a cliche. It's not infallible, but it's not a quick man's pitch. Certainly not nowadays. So it's not one to bang it in and hope the best. It's one for those that keep it up at a good length and fuller, who normally get the movement at Leeds. So those are the things that everyone needs to think about, England and India alike.
Absolutely. And coming a little deeply into the Indian team, if you look at Rishabh Pant, he's allowed India to play 5 bowlers because of the quality of his batting. I mean, he's a match winner with the bat, and we've seen him before in this year. We might see him again in this series, scoring 100 or even 2. You never know.
Yeah.
But the added to that is Jadeja's batting skill, and he's had at least 3 contributions in this series already with the bat. Although his bowling wasn't very penetrative, and as I said, Ashwin is not there. But Ishant at number 8 in the first innings. I mean, in the second innings, we had Bumrah and Shami shining with the bat, and Ishant also did a bit. But Ishant at 8, I mean, he is definitely a number 10 or 11. So Ashwin at 8 as a batsman and getting an off spinner in, even if he is an off spinner and you're playing in England. I mean, Ashwin is Ashwin, as you said. I mean, Australia never dropped Shane Warne, right? But they had, of course, one spinner. We have Jadeja as well, so that complicates things. I think Ashwin should play the rest of the series. And I don't know if you're with me. 3+2 is the way for India to go.
Well, 3+2 is very traditional. And I mean, I, as a captain in the mid-80s, quite often had 3+2. But we had the all-rounder. We always had, or normally had, both of them, obviously, as the world's, one of the leading all-rounders of all time in that era. So if Ian was playing, a couple more seamers, him and a couple of spinners often worked quite well. Even when he wasn't playing, there were times when, for instance, winning in India in 84-5, where we didn't have Ian, but we had Richard Ellison, we had Norman Cowans, we had Neil Foster, we had Phil Edmonds and Pat Pocock as the spinners, both of them very, very good. And that combination there worked well. But I mean, again, I'll sort of just thinking about Leeds itself. It's not normally a pitch for spinners. It's never been a pitch for spinners. So putting 2 in, you're not going to get, I don't think you're going to get much out of that. You might get more runs. As you say, Ashwin very handy with the bat, as well as being, the best off spinner in the world. So you might have that, in which case you're being, should we say, slightly more defensive on the grounds that, have the runs on the board, but will you find it any easier or as easy to take wickets? And I would suggest that at Leeds, you always tend, I've been to Leeds as a captain, and I've had the chairman selector saying to me, do we need a spinner at all? If you have, say, for England, Joe Root just to fill in, do you need a spinner at all? And many times over the years, historically, that would have been fair enough. So I would probably still say that for Leeds, the more likely selection for both teams will be the 4 seamers.
Right.
And they'll slug it out accordingly. Maybe after that, places like Old Trafford, for instance, at the end of the series, the Oval, maybe you could say then, well, actually, those overs bowled by Ishant, they could be bowled by Ashwin. You've still got the other 3 seamers, or you can take any other 3 seamers out of this very strong squad and maybe get all you need from them. And of course, if you are, by any chance, for instance, let's put the scenario out in front. Say India are able to win at Headingley, 2-0 up, 2 to play. Well, at that stage, with those pitches. The Oval is normally a very good pitch. Old Trafford is normally a very good pitch. And they both, in a good year, have a bit of bounce that people like Ashwin as a spinner would like. They don't necessarily turn a lot. Old Trafford probably more likely to turn than the Oval, who knows? But yes, that sort of change then might actually work on the grounds, exactly the grounds you say. Bit more runs, few more runs from Ashwin as a batter, strengthen the batting lineup. When you've got an Ashwin, you're not exactly weakening any bowling lineup, but it's just a question if the circumstances, conditions help you decide otherwise. And of course, as we get towards those final two test matches, hate to say this, but we are getting towards the end of not a very good summer. So who knows? It might be what dare I use the phrase, it's what we call an Indian summer. If we have late, good autumn weather, that's our Indian summer. But our Indian summer could therefore lead to an Indian summer. In other words, India winning the series.
Yeah. Very interesting, David. I want to talk about the middle order. I know you played at one down a lot and perhaps at two down and three down at times. But, this middle order of India and even England we'll talk about. See, the openers you mentioned. I mean, there's nothing much to discuss there. They're really, really good at the moment. And Rahul, of course, is luckily in the Indian Test team, but he looked probably the most stylish of all, barring Rohit, of course, who's a supreme stylist. But just briefly touching upon them and then going to the middle order, Kohli, Pujara, Rahane, or Pujara, Kohli and Rahane in that order, they were under pressure to score. And they did score a little bit. Their averages have not been great. None of them has got 100 for a while, except for Rahane in Melbourne. But they have a long distance to go. And then England, I feel, should have, that's my opinion, Bairstow should come up the order, even if he's just finding his way back to Test cricket. Maybe one down, and maybe Root at 2, and maybe Moeen Ali coming at number 5, and Butler maybe opening instead of one of these, maybe opening with Malan or Burns. Wouldn't that look a little stronger? So compare the two batting lineups.
Well, it would look very different, wouldn't it? I was talking, I mentioned it. I'm pretty sure what will happen for England is Burns, Hamid, Malan, Root. Root is very fixed at 4, and he produces all those millions of runs at 4. So that's the only certainty about England's batting is Root at 4. Potentially Bairstow has batted 3 before. I wouldn't change him from 5 personally. Nor would I put Butler up the order because I think he found a little form towards the end of that second innings at Lords. He looked a bit more settled, but I don't think he's in position to go any higher than that. So I'm afraid I think it's going to be a little bit of fingers crossed at the top of the order. But for instance, Burns does have a real strong character, and he has made a couple of half centuries in the series, and I think that's what he's good for. So I think I suppose the fact that always the problem, and anyone who's ever opened innings will tell you, it's a place where you can get out quickly on a bad day if you're unlucky. So he's always going to have that potential issue. That's why you always ask openers, and when they learn the lesson, they do it. If they get in, they get stuck in. To make up for those noughts and ones and twos you're inevitably going to get at one stage, you make as big a 100 as possible. And of course, as an opener, you've got more time than anyone. So you need, these guys need to get some hundreds under their belts. So I can't see it changing dramatically from there. As far as India are concerned, we've nailed down the fact that Rohit and Rahul are in good form and looking really good. Yes, one of them one day might be Leeds, will get a good ball early on, and it won't be a 100 opening partnership. But and they've played and missed a few times because that's what happens at the top of the order with the new ball. The likes of Pujara and Rahane obviously have been under an awful lot of pressure because they've looked ill at ease. The partnership they put on in the second innings was slow. By anyone's definition, it was a slow partnership, but it was in the end, part of a winning team effort where you absorb a bit of pressure for 2 or 3 hours in the afternoon, and it doesn't matter necessarily in the context of 5 days like that, that's a slow passage of play. But it would have given the two of them a little bit of reassurance that, they got out of the single figure bracket because they hadn't, hardly between them scored a run. So that gives them another bit of leeway to play with and another game to play. And obviously, if you've got a side where you're winning as you did at Lords, you're unlikely to make too many changes. I know there are people like Agarwal on the sidelines who would have expected to open the innings had he been fit at the start of the series. So there are people there keen to play for sure, keen to put their hands up and be included if at all possible. Obviously with Rohit, I mean, I know this is a traditional game. It's a traditional sport. When someone as talented as him has a year, maybe slightly longer, without making the sort of runs that he's expected to, all sorts of comments start flying around him. The conversation gets animated, and you start talking about, what's happened to Virat Kohli? Mm-hmm. Well, he's not been at his best, and the contrast between this year and 3 years ago is that, actually, again, if you look at it very carefully, at Birmingham 3 years ago, he needed quite a lot of luck, actually, not to get out to Anderson at the start of that innings. And it turned out to be one of the great innings of all time, as he almost got India into position to win the game, single-handedly. So on the back of such things are things like form-based. That little bit of luck, we should never forget, is always crucial, even to the very, very best of players. So the disappointing thing for him, I think, is that he's played a couple of shots, he's edged a couple behind, where actually he'll look at the replays and think, I shouldn't even have been playing at those. And that was his problem before he reorganized himself 3 years ago. So the previous tour before the last one, before 2018, was where he got out cheaply pretty much all the time, fending at balls outside the off stump. So these are things that even the best can sometimes still get wrong. These are things that are not unfixable. This is not an insurmountable problem for Virat Kohli because he has so much talent. And if he has a good day, I mean, however good you are, you just want a good day somewhere, maybe just to fire yourself back up to the next level or back up to the levels you were beforehand. But I mean, I think on the back of the win at Lords, it's not really going to change much, is it? Only maybe if there's another failure, Pujara or Rahane maybe. Pujara is probably the one under most pressure because of the way he plays. He's always soaking up pressure, but only if he stays there. Therefore, the game is not necessarily moving forward while he's at the crease, and his record in England overall isn't great. So Headingley might not, and even though he played a bit at Yorkshire a couple of years ago, Headingley might not be his favourite ground. I'm not sure about that. But yes, within the broader context, some of these people, even though they're on the winning side for now, will be feeling that pressure to produce again.
Yeah, I'm glad you used the term fired up because I'm going to ask you about Kohli's firing up his team and also an altercation with Jimmy Anderson, who took a fifer again at Lords. 18 years after he took his first fifer, he got another one here. And he's, of course, at 39, he's just electrifying the way he's still bowling. But this aggro between him and Kohli, and then Kohli himself, there's a great debate in India about Kohli and the way he's always been like that. But here he went a little extra in this match. So we feel that he should temper his behavior a little bit. And while the excitement and the motivation and the inspiration and the aggro is fine, but he needs to be a little calmer as a captain. So what do you think of his demeanor, his way? Is it working? Should he continue or should he calm down a bit?
Well, he's not me and I'm not him. And we are obviously, if you look back, 30 years, sadly, whatever it is now, that was not my style, but I don't begrudge it being his style because, I'm an admirer of passion when it comes to sport, whether it be cricket or other sports. I mean, I like to see people showing that passion, showing that competitive spirit. It's all very well to be calm, cool and collected. And to say, in my case, the words used were always laid back. Whatever, obviously underneath, I was just defend myself by saying underneath there's still, the will to win, the competitive spirit. You just don't show it in the same way. Now, I mean, I don't have anything against Virat's. I mean, I could probably accept that some of it, sometimes it's a little over the top. Yeah. So maybe just a little tempering of that. But if you take the essence of the man away, what are you left with? Why would you want Virat Kohli, who is already one of the world's great players of all time, and a determined captain, a passionate captain? Why would you want to take away his spirit? Why would you want to slow him down? Because okay, there are different ways of captaining teams, and people can be less demonstrative and still very effective as leaders. I mean, one of the greats I played under at the start of my Test career, Mike Brearley, it was not, shall we say, as emotive as Kohli has been in this series. But actually, again, Mike, underneath that, there was a lot of cool, calm stuff going on. But underneath that, could have a sharp word, could make his feelings very known if the things were going wrong. And it's just a vision. It's a perception. So personally, I wouldn't go to Virat and say, any chance you could tone this down, particularly maybe just a tiny bit, maybe just, if there are moments where it goes over the top and is unacceptable, that's a different thing. But actually the basis of it, I think, is very good for him and for his team. And again, if that spirit is imbued in the team as a whole, and let's face it, there was, as we say, a certain Kohli-style passion. It looked a bit different down the order with Shami and Bumrah in that second innings when they were taking on the bouncers and getting hit on the heads and fighting back and fighting fire with fire. That's the sort of thing you get when your captain is a passionate leader and you're battling to stay in the game. Again, I'll make the point, England will reflect on that, thinking they lost control. Their emotion, this is the key, isn't it? England as a team, with their passions running high, their emotions running high for that crucial hour on the fifth morning, lost control of the game and lost the game. If you control that emotion and that high passion, and it drives people forward in the right direction, then you're getting the right use from that energy. So that's where, it's one thing to be cool and calm. It's one thing to be passionate and emotional. But actually, it's whichever way works for you, whichever way drives you in the right direction is the way to go. And that's why it can vary. That's why you get different captains of different hues, different methods, getting good results.
Very well said, David. I totally agree with you. I think the emotional intelligence comes into place somewhere and you need to channelize that aggression in the right direction. I totally feel that Kohli's style is working, definitely. But then Rahane and Dhoni have also led India to great victories in the past, totally contrasting personalities to Kohli. So the debate will be on. But just to look ahead, and we will meet before the end of the series once more. Let's just venture. It's very difficult to predict. England was 1-0 up in India in the first test, and they lost the series 3-1. So here we are 1-0 up, India's up, and 3 tests to go. India was 1 test up even a few years ago, lost 4-1. So you never know. And let's see what happens. So Headingley, Old Trafford, and the Oval. Any overall predictions and how the series is likely to go, or you don't want to venture out that much?
Well, I can give you a prediction. It's meaningless. I've been asked by all sorts of people to give predictions, and the easy way out of that, when before the series started, I said 2-2. So I'm quoted elsewhere as saying 2-2. That could still be the case, of course. That's still potentially possible. But when you make those predictions, let's face it, could we have predicted that fifth day at Lord's? No. If someone had said to me, I've had a dream, Shami and Bumrah will put on 89, whatever it was, smash it to all parts at Lord's on day 5, and India will win by 150. No, come on. I don't know what drugs you're on, but you need to go and see a doctor. So these moments of unpredictability, or these things that are impossible to predict, make the game what it is. And it's that, again, going back to the spirit that's involved in that. The moment you would say that India have the confidence from winning, confidence from having the better of the first game as well. They should have won that first game, but as we can say, of course, you never know. It's not actually in the book. It won't be in Wisden next year as a win, but it could have been a very good win. So they will take that confidence into the next couple of games, next 3 games. And England know they need to improve, and they're making changes. Therefore, it's always the same thing. You make changes hoping to improve things. For the new player coming in, he's aware of what's gone on before, aware of the pressures. Again, to use Milan as the example, he's been out of the game, out of Test cricket for 3 years, whatever it is now. He's been playing, trying to keep his reputation alight as one of the world's finest white ball players. and his reputation is very strong there. But now you've got to do what everyone else does, which is change that mentality into a test match mentality. And not everyone has the gift. I mean, I don't think he's quite as gifted, shall we say, as Virat, as Kane Williamson, as Joe Root, as Steve Smith. The best batsmen in the world, so the likes of de Villiers in days gone past, had that great ability to sort of turn the switch, turn the dial from test to 50 to 20 to 100, whatever it might be. And that's an extraordinary talent to have, and only the very best can do that. So, there is a certain amount of finger crossing going on in England at the moment. I dare say one or two pagan rituals going on as well. They try and inspire the team to come back, but it's all there to play for. Now, Leeds, Leeds is a ground where I think you need to understand the way that pitch works. So I talked about that earlier, and the likes of Jimmy Anderson, has enough experience to know where he should be bowling at Leeds, but it doesn't always happen that way. Someone like Robinson with his angles and lengths should be useful up there because he gets it full, might have get it fractionally fuller to be even more successful there. If Curran plays again, then he does get it full. So he's the sort of bowler who will just get something from the surface there. And we'll see see if Mark Wood is fit. If Mahmood has to play, well, he's quick and he's come on leaps and bounds last few years. So I think he's a very good replacement to have available for England. So it could all hinge. For instance, I've seen games there where you're ready for a 5-day game, suddenly it's all over in 2 days, because conditions are right and bowlers get it right and batsmen haven't got a price. So if you have that sort of game, that can go either way. Low scoring games, it's all on tight margins. So my predictions. I mean, I might as well just do it for you. I'll stick to 2-2 because that's the patriotic thing to do, and I'm very happy, or very not happy. I'm very prepared to be proven wrong. Maybe even start it. Well, no, actually, I can't be proven wrong yet, can I? Because even if India win at Leeds, it's still only 2-0.
Absolutely,
so there's still a chance for 2-2. So I'm fine. I'm very safe for at least 2 more games, if not 3.
Well said, David. And actually, predicting a cricket series is as fraught with risk as anything else. So I totally agree, and I have sympathy for you for having been asked to predict the score. But one thing I must say at the end, and I'd like your quick comment on it, the very fact that we're playing and the crowds are back and sport is back after a difficult year and a half, I mean, this is a celebration of sport, and we just hope that it keeps carrying on. So how important is sport at this time for society? I know it's a tough one, but maybe as quickly.
Well, no, that's never tough because, again, I'll use another example for you. We are currently trying to get some dinners in place. We've had one, we've got a couple sorted out. We've got 4 planned in total to celebrate the 81 Ashes, so Botham's Ashes. And I have been helping get together the players for these dinners. Now, that sort of thing, it's a memory from 40 years ago. It's the 40th anniversary. That sort of thing sticks in sports lovers' minds. And that was a year, I'm going to sort of put this in context, that was a year where there was a lot of civil unrest in the UK. There were problems with coal mines, with miners strikes. Politics was not fun. There was a lot of angst in the country. And that series of cricket did a lot to lighten the mood or improve the mood of the entire country on the back of, especially Ian Botham's performances, but obviously the team as a whole winning that series. We now have a very different set of circumstances with the pandemic. But at the same time, sports lovers are sports lovers. And I suppose there is the other side of that coin. Non-sports lovers couldn't give a monkeys. But for a lot of people in this country, just having sport, first of all, they're on the TV. So last summer, when it was only on TV, that kept them in touch with sort of the lack of reality that sport copes with. The outside world can be very different, but sport somehow is something which people enjoy. It takes them away from any other issues and problems, and especially if your team is winning, then it brings you up. So we've got crowds back, which is great. I mean, Lords could have been even better if they weren't spacing people out and keeping the numbers down in the pavilion, because that would have been full, properly full, under normal conditions. And that's still the thing. These dinners, for instance, we're putting on, we're still getting half the numbers we would in a good year. 2 years ago, had it been the anniversary then, we'd have probably got double the numbers of people to come and celebrate great events from 40 years ago. So there's still a little bit of cautiousness about, of course, and that's understandable and probably very sensible. But there will be a good crowd at Headingley, I am sure. And they will be there to the benefit of both teams, actually, because, of course, that part of the world, there'll be good support for India. There's always good support for England. And a crowd lifts teams. I mean, teams have had to go through this thing for the last 18 months, where wherever they've played, it's been played in silence. There's the only people there are the people in yellow gilet throwing the ball back when it goes over the boundary and sanitizing the ball. So I mean, to have people there and to be in amongst it actually is nice. I mean, to be there with the buzz. Places like Lords in that last game, Lords has a sort of particular buzz about it when there's a test match on. Other grounds have more noise, other grounds have different atmospheres, but wherever you go, it is just rather nice, rather good to have that buzz and that atmosphere. So that will actually inspire, I'm sure, both teams to produce great stuff, competitive stuff for these final 3 games.
Thank you, David. I hope your dinners go well. This celebration of 40 years of that memorable series. I was watching the highlights of that series last year, I remember. And you rightly said about the unrest and how both of them uplifted the mood. And that's what sport can do for the world even at this time. And you rightly said that just to have crowds back. I mean, we missed the crowds at the Olympic Games as well. And I really didn't enjoy people in masks on the podium. I mean, I wanted to see their expressions of joy and even tears of joy. So anyway, we missed all that. But we'll have you back for another discussion very soon. And it's always wonderful to have you, so charming and so knowledgeable and so analytical also in your own way. Without having too much time on hand, we put across so much for the audience. Thank you once again, David, and see you soon again.
Well, always a pleasure. I'll look forward to the next one.
Thank you, David. See you.